In this video, we're going to cover chamfers and how to create chamfer machining strategies. So this is the part that I'm going to be working with, and I can go ahead and use my extract machinable features. I've got my machine, my stock, all that set up. So I'm going to find all the machinable features on this part. And one thing that you will notice in the strategies that are given to you out of the box in CamWorks, none of these strategies actually have chamfers set up in them, so this is something that we're going to add. So we've got the hole group for the holes that do not have the chamfer on them. The holes that do have the chamfer on them have been created into a countersink hole group. Now, if you do want to countersink these, then you would leave that. However, we want to actually go ahead and add the chamfer machining in here, so we're going to chamfer that hole instead of use the countersink tool. We've also got a whole bunch of different irregular pockets, and then we've got one rectangular pocket for the outside. So I can go ahead and generate the operation plan for all of these features, and it's going to go ahead and create my rough finish strategies, my drilling strategies, and then I can see what I've got once the tool paths are here. So like I said, the countersink is actually going to give us a countersink tool path because that's what's in the strategy. So if I come back into my feature tree and choose the parameters on the countersink tool path, you'll see I have 4 different strategies in here. The first one is the drilling strategy, which I left it at because that's going to give me a center drill and a drill and then the countersink. So it's probably easier to just choose that and then go ahead and delete the countersink tool path once it's been created. We've also got boring, reaming, and then threading. So quite a few different options in here, and you can choose any one of those and delete the tool paths that you don't want, but I feel like the best option is to use the drill that's been given and then just go ahead and delete that countersink once we've got it. So here it is. So I can delete that, and then it goes into my recycling bin, and I'll just minimize that so it doesn't confuse anyone. So now I've got my center drill and my drill for the holes, and then center drill and drill for the other holes. So you'll notice also that the top edge has been selected for both options. So the top edge being the actual countersink edge on these holes. So it has actually taken into account that the countersink is there. If I come back into my feature tree, you'll notice on my irregular pocket that it has also selected that top edge of the chamfer that I want to machine. So if I was to actually create my own feature separately from the extract machinable features, so if I go ahead and say new 2.5 axis feature, I'm going to create this pocket, so I'll select the bottom face here, go to my end condition, select this top face. You can actually see it doesn't take into account the chamfer. Once I create that feature, you can see here's my irregular pocket 1 and my irregular pocket 5. So they're quite different because the irregular pocket 1 actually knows that the chamfer's in there, whereas the irregular pocket 5 does not. So I'm going to delete that pocket 5. And we're going to work with the pocket 1 because we can actually add that chamfer into this feature. So I'm going to go ahead and generate the tool paths that have been given. So I've got all of these different tool paths here, so everything's done except for the chamfers themselves. So the chamfers are going to come last anyway, so we're going to go ahead and add that in. So we'll start with the countersink feature here, so these holes. We're going to go ahead and right click on the feature, and then we're going to say new hole machining operations, and this is going to be not a countersink but a contour. So I want to actually treat it as a contour tool path, and then I'm going to use the correct chamfer tool and chamfer settings in that contour tool path. So I'm going to go ahead and use the technology database defaults from the database that we've been given, so I'll press OK here. And then I want to edit this tool path before I generate it, because you'll notice we're actually using a 12mm flat end mill tool right now, and I'm not going to get a chamfer out of that tool. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select a different tool. I'm going to add in my tool. So I'm going to go to add. The one thing that I do want to stress is that you need to select a tapered tool in order to use the chamfer option. So if I do try and use a flat end mill for chamfer machining feature, it won't actually let me. An error window will come up and it will say that I can't actually use that tool. So I need to either use one of these tapered tools or a countersink tool or any tool that has an actual angle on it. So I'm going to use my countersink tool. You'll notice that we have quite a few selections in here, and I need to find the correct tool that's going to work for that chamfer. So the one thing that does really matter is this countersink angle, or the angle that your tapered tool would be set to. So I'm actually going to choose the 90 degree, and the reason why, and I'll just cancel out of this and show you why, is because if I go into my chamfer settings in SolidWorks, you'll see that I have a 45 degree chamfer angle. So that 90 degree chamfer tool is going to give me this 45 degree chamfer angle. And you'll also see that I do have a 2 millimeter distance on that chamfer. So the chamfer is actually going to be 2 millimeters long. So I'll choose OK here and then go back in and set up that tool path. So edit the definition and my countersink I need to add. So this again was the 5 millimeter at 90 degrees. So 5 millimeters at 90 degrees. And then I'm going to select the tool. And then as soon as I go into my contour tab and turn on my chamfer machining, you'll see the angle I can't actually change because it's based on the tool itself, but it's at 45 degrees because I've put in that 90 degree tool. So then I'm going to go ahead and put in my length, which was 2 millimeters. And then I've also got the option for the clearance. And I'm going to show you a quick photo of what that clearance is. So this is the clearance setting, and that's actually going to be how far the tip comes after the bottom edge of the chamfer. So I'm going to close out of this and add in my clearance. So let's say I want to put in 1 millimeter. As soon as I do that, it gives me a warning message that says the resultant chamfer length will be 0 for the current combination of tool diameter, chamfer length, and clearance. So I need to modify one of those. So as soon as I press OK, it actually modifies the clearance for me. So it's saying your tool isn't big enough to get this length with the clearance that I had set. So it goes ahead and it modifies the clearance to the biggest clearance that I can get with that tool. So now I'm set with my 0.5 millimeter clearance, and then I've got my feature edge option as well. So the last thing in here is to choose whether it's an apex or an outer edge. So apex is actually going to be if I hadn't modeled the chamfer. So if it was just this edge that I wanted to chamfer, that would be the apex. So if I go into my help menu, there's also a photo of the apex and outer edge at the bottom here. So apex again is going to be the resultant line between the two, the top edge and the side edge. So that would be that top edge there if it wasn't modeled, or if I could select that apex. The outer edge is if I actually have the chamfer modeled, I need to select that top edge. So it kind of shows you which edge to select. So I'm going to choose outer edge because we've got this modeled. So we've got the top edge modeled here. And then I can either press OK or preview. So I'm going to press preview just to see what it looks like. So it's going to do a lead in here. It's going to go around and then it's going to come back out. So I'll press OK here. And now we've got our contour mill 6, which is going to be the chamfer tool path for our holes. So we've got quite a few different features that also need chamfers. So we could go through and add chamfer tool paths to each one of these, or we could add them all in at one time. So one thing that we can do is we can add in a new 2.5 axis feature, and we can just select all of the different pockets. So I need to make sure that I'm on convert to loop if I'm going to be selecting edges, and then I can go ahead and select that top edge for all of the different pockets that I actually want to add this chamfer to. So there's my pockets, my 4 irregular pockets, my end condition, and the end condition can be any length because we are actually going to set that length the actual length settings inside of the tool path. So I can make this 10 millimeters if I want to. I'm going to change the strategy. Currently it's set to rough finish, but I just want a finishing tool path, just that contour. So I'm going to choose the fine strategy, and then I'll choose OK. And that's going to give me my 4 irregular pockets. So I can go ahead and generate all of those. And then I can take those tool paths and I'm going to change those. So I'm going to say edit definition, and I'm going to change these settings to the exact same settings that I just did with the last one. So change my tool out to this countersink. Then I go into my contour settings, into my chamfer machining, add that 2 millimeter length and the 0.5 millimeter clearance. And this again is going to be on the outer edge because we actually selected the outer edge and the chamfer is modeled. So I can press preview here, and there's my chamfer tool path. So you will notice there are actually 2 different tool paths on this chamfer. So if I wanted to change that, these are actually set up in the side parameter settings. So you can see under my finished passes, I've actually got a final cut amount. So if I didn't actually want that final cut amount, I can just press 0 and then press OK. And now I only have the 1 tool path. So there's my settings for the first tool path. And then if I want all of the others to be the exact same settings, I can go ahead and link those together. So I can right click on the tool path, and then I can say link operation. And then I'm going to link 8, 9, and 10 with that. So 8 to 10. I'll bring those over into the selected operations and choose link. So you'll notice as soon as I do that, all of the tools are the exact same now. If I go into any of these tool paths, you can see that my chamfer settings are all the exact same. And even the settings that I changed with my finish passes are the same as well. So all of those have been set up, so I can go ahead and generate the tool paths here. So I'm going to select all 3 of them and generate the tool paths. So there's all my different tool paths, and it's even done the inside features, which are the actual islands inside of this pocket, which we actually want it to do. So that's been set up. And the last one is going to be the boss feature, and then the rectangular perimeter feature. So instead of creating the contour toolpath on this rectangular pocket, you'll actually see when I select the rectangular pocket, it's also included all of the features on the inside here. So I actually want to use this one here on the outside of this boss, but I don't want the outside of these features. So I'm actually going to do these separately. So again, add in my new 2.5 axis feature. This is going to be a pocket, and then I'm going to go ahead and select the outside perimeter of that feature, go to my end condition, choose my fine strategy. Then I'm going to go ahead and select the island option, and if I scroll down, none of the islands are selected here, so I'm good to go. I want to press OK here, and now I've just got the outside perimeter. So I'm going to go ahead and generate the operation plan. So I'm going to right click on the first operation that I linked. So I'm going to say link operation, and then I can add in contour mill 12. And then I can go ahead and generate that one. So there's just the outside edge, which is perfect. Then I want to add in one more feature, which is the boss feature. So I'm going to go ahead and say new 2.5 axis feature. This is on the outside of this feature, so it's going to be treated as a boss. And then I'm going to also select that top edge. End condition can again be 10 millimeters. With the fine strategy, choose OK, generate the operation plan, and this also can be linked. So I'm going to right click on that contour mill 7, choose link operation, and choose 13. Generate the tool path, and now we've got the same settings around the outside. So one option, instead of linking all of these toolpaths together, is if we actually want to create a strategy to use for all of these. So if I would have just used the chamfer strategy on all of these different features, I wouldn't have had to come back in here and link them together. So one way to do that is to go ahead and take one of my pockets or one of my bosses and actually right click on that feature and choose Save Operation Plan. I can either create a new feature condition or overwrite the existing. So I want to create a new one because I don't want to overwrite my regular just contour toolpath. So I'm going to create a new feature condition, and then I drop this down and choose New. The new strategy name can be chamfer. And I don't want to set this as a default, I just want to add this in when I need it. So I'm going to press OK here. It goes ahead and it creates feature conditions that have to be true in order to use this. So there are quite a few different parameters in the top with different values. We've also got size parameters. So we've got the box width and the feature depth. So we've got 0 to 77 millimeters, but I can actually open that up to any size. So maybe I want to go up to 1,000 millimeters so that this works for everything. I can also do the same with the feature depth. So maybe I want to, instead of going to 10 millimeters, maybe I want to go to 100 millimeters. Then I can use this for pretty much any irregular wrapped pocket that I want to use this for. So this strategy is not going to work for this boss feature. So I'm going to actually have to create my own strategy for boss and pockets. So I'll press OK there. And now I've got my chamfer strategy for this feature. If I go down to the next one, I can go ahead and my parameters, and I can say I want my chamfer strategy. So it's at the top here. And it's going to go ahead and it's going to use my countersink tool, and it has all of the information in here about the tool path. I press OK, and then if I generate the operation plan, so I'm just going to regenerate this, you'll see it gives me my contour mill with the correct tool. And then if I edit the definition on this tool path and go into my contour settings, all of my chamfer machining settings have been saved. So then I just need to generate the toolpath. So that's a really easy way to add in that chamfer. Now another option is to add in a chamfer machining setting for this countersink. So what it's got currently under the drill is a center drill, a drill, and a countersink option. What I want to make is a drilling with a chamfer option. So I want to right click on this and say Save Operation Plan. Because all of those toolpaths have been associated with that feature, they're all connected to it and are all going to be saved with this new feature condition. So I'm going to create a new feature condition, and I'm going to say New, and this is going to be drill with chamfer. And then I'll choose OK. And now I've got drill with chamfer. So now every time I generate this, so if I generate the operation plan, I can now get a center drill, a drill, and this contour mill. So I'll generate those tool paths, and now I've got my center drill, my drilling tool path, and then my chamfer tool path. So these strategies can be added to any feature at all. So if I go back into my feature tree, we've got the boss feature. I can add the same chamfer strategy to this. I can also add it to my rectangular pockets and all the different feature types available. So I can go through and actually add a rough finish chamfer toolpath if I want here as well. Because I can add the actual chamfer to that feature, it will actually be added to the whole strategy.